doing, Adam here, filming another night walk, trying to determine whether or not my life has just been one long dream, or maybe I possibly took some DMT some time ago and I'm just having one of those trips that they say feels like you've been tripping for 10 years or something, but it's only been a couple of minutes. I remember one time Ari Shafir, who was a comedian, talked about how he took, I don't think it was DMT, I think it was like salvia or one of those kind of drugs. And he said that in the trip, it felt like he had been living some life for like 10 years, but it was only like a couple minutes that he was out, so wouldn't it be funny if, my whole life has just been one long dream? I hope it isn't. I want it to be real. I've grown attached to too many things here for it to all have been, well, maybe it's not a dream so much. It's just like a collective dream we're all having, where you can sort of like, speak your dreams into existence. Yeah, so I don't know, you probably don't hear them right now, but there are some fireworks going off because it is New Year's Day. Well, I mean, yeah, technically New Year's Day, but it's still night. It's only like 1 a.m. right now. And I wanted to do sort of a New Year's resolutions video where I talk about some New Year's resolutions that I have, because I did write down a couple of them that I really want to try to do this year. And the first of them being, the first and I think the most important one, is that I just want to like bring my presence back to the world, because here's the thing, I wrote this a while ago, a long time ago, a couple of years ago. I wrote this sort of like list of recurring themes that I've noticed in my life, just things that like seem to like be repeating patterns that I've noticed happening. And maybe I'll put like a screenshot of it, like of all the things that I've noticed, like up here somewhere. And one of the things that I've noticed that happens with me is premature death. Like there seems to be like a recurring theme in my life is premature death. Not like literal death, but just like symbolically. Seems to be like, things sort of like keep dying before they've ever had a chance. Like I remember I made this video one time where I was talking about how I relate to romantic paintings or whatever. There's that boat that capsized and there's all the boats sailing off into the sunset, before it ever had the chance or whatever. And I feel like I relate to that because it's like, it's sort of a thing, like a feeling of premature death. But, in the spirit of, so here's the thing though, I think that's a bad story to tell yourself, like in the name of telling yourself stories and, speaking those into existence, I would like to speak a better story into my existence. Because I think with that, with the sort of like, premature death thing, or, being the boat that capsized before it ever had the chance, there's an element of possibly like self-pity with that, and, there's something sick, there's something romantic about self-pity, like but there's something sick about it at the same time, like it's sort of romanticized. Like, it's not to say there's not real problems. Like, that's not to say that you haven't like capsized in some way, but you're sort of romanticizing your own death. I think that's a big mistake. Like there's this part in Call of Duty Black Ops where Viktor Reznov is like, you're about to like, go on the train, like he's, you jump on the train and he's like, your turn, Reznov. And then he's like, freedom for you, Mason, not for me. And it's just that feeling, like there's something romantic about that feeling of like, you guys go on without me. Just please let me die here. But again, like, I think that's a bad story to tell yourself. I don't want to die. That's just the truth of it. Like, I've lived long enough now to where it's like, yeah, the romantic story can feel good, but you're still just ignoring your problems, and it's still better to live, So, and I think, the way to live would be to just reinsert myself into reality, like not block it off. Because, I think that part of me, that sort of capsized boat part of me, that came into existence, because I have social anxiety, you know? And because, I mean, I was kind of bullied when I was younger, And so I was kind of like pushed out of the feeling that anybody could ever be interested in anything that I have to say, And again, like I probably come off like confident in videos, like, I could probably relate to you in videos and even in person. Like I'm probably like this in person too. Like if we ever talked, I'm probably like this in person too, But the problem is that like there's parts of, and again, I hate using sort of pop psychology terms, but there's parts of myself that I dissociate from. Um, like there's, again, this sounds so like cheesy or whatever, but there's darkness in me that I'm just like, that I pretend doesn't exist, Um, and I think the way to get back to like not dissociating is to just like slowly let the darkness back in, because I feel like the darkness very recently too, like over the past year or two, it's just been like symbolically, I mean, it's just been like begging to be acknowledged. And it's just, but I'm just like, I'm so scared of it. It's like, what's going to happen if I like open back up this part of me, It's like, it's scary to look at, but you can't split off from yourself, You have to completely integrate yourself. Like, they talk about like integrating the shadow or whatever. Like if you don't acknowledge your shadow, it's just going to, go off causing all kinds of mischief. You have to acknowledge your shadow and then then make it a part of you, Like, I remember Jordan Peterson always used to talk about like, oh, you have to integrate your shadow. And that's true, you have to like acknowledge your shadow. And I think one of the reasons for why, my life or, whatever, it doesn't feel, feels empty is because I'm just like dissociating from the darker parts of myself, which are just like begging me to acknowledge them. And I think it's time. I think one of my resolutions is to acknowledge the darker parts of myself. I was just thinking earlier, I'm a lot like Boogie, like, and again, I mean, I've said this before on another journal, but I am an old school YouTuber, So like, I remember the old, because Boogie, despite all of the sort of drama, whatever stuff that he has gotten into over the past couple of years, back in the day, like everybody fucking loved Boogie, and like even myself, like even during this drama stuff, like I was still a fan of Boogie, but I think the thing with Boogie is the same thing with me. It's the same thing that happens with me, is that like there's this sort of like 10% part of himself, like, the Francis part of himself that has like split off, and there's a 10% part of me that is like, or who knows what percentage part of me is like the dark part, that I haven't like fully integrated into myself. And so like, I think people that watch my videos, maybe they get the sense that I'm like not fully integrated in that way, in the same way that maybe Boogie feels not fully integrated. I actually think I've always been a fan of Boogie. Yeah, and so first goal is to reinsert myself into the world, and I think part of doing that will just be to acknowledge the darker parts of myself. Because if I'm not fully integrated, then I'm not going to fully sort of like, be able to. If I'm just completely dissociated from all the darker parts of myself, then reality is never going to feel anything, That's just my intuition about it. If I'm ever going to come back to life, I just have to stop denying that there's like darkness there and just acknowledge it and let it, you know, come in. Yeah, so that's resolution one. And yeah, so the second resolution was I wanted to, well, if you've been wondering, and this is probably like 85% of the reason why I haven't come back to YouTube yet, is I gained like 15 pounds that I need to lose, and I've been like fairly self-conscious about like coming back, you know. And yeah, so I think I want to lose some weight. It's like, you know, I need to lose like 15, 20 pounds. That's not to say that I won't come to the YouTube before I lose all. I would like to lose at least like 5 or 10 before I come back to YouTube, you know, or at least on my main channel anyway. And yeah, so that's, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. Lose 15 or 20 pounds. Yeah, so the third goal is that I want to come back to YouTube. Because, I don't know, I just get the sense that, and it's been really weird, like, for some reason on YouTube, it seems like there's been an uptick in sort of the nostalgia about like early YouTube and just like the early internet generally. Like, I mean, I'm talking about like Skibidi Toilet or whatever. It's just like, I know maybe people of a certain age don't remember what early YouTube looked like, because I mean, at this point, I'm an old head at this point. But it's very reminiscent of what like early YouTube looked like. Like, you know, people just posting Gary's Mod stuff of like fucking Team Fortress 2 or like Left 4 Dead, or in the case of Skibidi Toilet, Half-Life 2. And I just feel like there's this nostalgia for like, you know, that sort of vibe, you know, or, you know, people just generally of my ilk, which is like sort of like older millennial, or maybe even sort of exennial. I know they invented that new sort of generation. I don't think I'm quite an exennial. I think I'm like the very, very edge of like the oldest millennial, you know. So I was born in '86, so. But I do, you know, I do have a lot of sort of, I do relate to a lot of sort of Gen X stuff, like early '90s sort of nostalgic things, like Wayne's World and like that sort of thing. And like, you know, hair metal, I think grunge, you know, I have very distinct memories of like grunge and sort of hair metal and all that kind of stuff. Or not so much hair metal. I don't have like, but I remember grunge, and I remember being into grunge and like Smashing Pumpkins and like Nirvana, watching MTV on the TV, and like watching Alanis Morissette, Ironic, on MTV when it came out. But yeah, I think there is sort of a resurgence. Seems to be a resurgence in just that sort of like early internet vibe. Like I think the Skibidi Toilet channel is called Da Fuck Boom. Like even that name, like just screams like 2008 YouTube, you know? But all those like Gary's Mod fucking videos are like shit posting, or like, you know, people repeating memes over and over again. That used to happen on like 4chan a lot. Like there would be a thread and just everybody would say the same thing, you know? Yeah, I mean, it's just very reminiscent of the early internet. So I think, you know, there would be, the time seems right to return to YouTube. I mean, I could be wrong about this. Could be just wishful thinking, but it just seems like that vibe is making a comeback for some reason. Like, you know, it got flushed down the toilet sometime in 2012, and then it spent a bunch of time down there, like, evolving, and now it's, like, re-emerging as this fucking unstoppable force. That's just the vibe I get from what's happening right now. Yeah, but, yeah, so probably high time to come back to YouTube and, like, you know, not just fucking sit there and die, but like try to fix myself and have some sort of like meteoric rise or whatever. You know, speak that into existence instead of my own death. Yeah, and so my last goal is actually to, I want to finally start the band that I've been talking about starting for all this time. And I don't know. I might make like a Craigslist ad to like start the band or whatever. Because I mean, I have a bunch of songs written. I feel like that's I maybe would perform this. So I want to just do something completely new though. Man, I don't know though. I don't know. It's something I would have to think about. I haven't thought about it too much, but I just feel like I want to make something totally new. Just like start some new channel with a new band name and just like do that. But we'll see. I don't know. By the way, Daniel, if you're watching, you should totally come to the U.S. So I think there's this sort of misconception, like among Europeans, that like America is just like everybody has a gun. Like if you don't have a gun, you risk being mugged by somebody that does have a gun. Or that we're just like living in a war zone. That if you go outside, you're just gonna get attacked by homeless people. By the way, on homeless people, if you're not like in the vicinity of like a large city, you're probably not going to see one. Like if you go into town, like you might see like a stray one there. But most homeless people are like, in large cities. So like if you're not in a large city, you're probably good. But even still, like let me tell you something about the homeless people in America, is that like, they might be scary, they might be like disheveled or whatever, but they are the fucking nicest people you will ever talk to in your life. Like you could have a life-affirming conversation with a homeless person if you allow it to happen. But and again, I mean, they're probably trying to schmooze you or whatever, just so you'll give them money. But I mean, that doesn't mean that it's not real. Like it's still coming from a real place, despite them trying to schmooze you for money or whatever. Yeah, so I mean, there's no reason to be afraid of them. And I mean, as far as guns goes, like, it's 1 a.m. I'm walking around in like a dark alley, sort of. I have no fear of anything bad happening. I mean, I realized that I did have a night walk at some point where, I encountered somebody that was homeless. But I mean, that was during the pandemic, and a bunch of people lost their jobs during the pandemic. So, I mean, there were a couple more homeless people like walking the streets, though. I think that guy had some other issues going on with him. But again, I talked with that guy. I had like an hour-long conversation with him, and like, every time I saw him, I was like chatting with him or whatever. And, he was a cool dude, Again, you can have very good conversations with homeless people. Yeah, but as far as guns goes, I have, like, maybe twice in my life I've ever seen, like, people openly carrying weapons. This might be different because I live in sort of the Northeast, so, like, maybe it's different in the South. I've never been to the South, so, well, I mean, if you count Delaware as the South, maybe, but, like, I've never been to the real South, but here in the Northeast, you will never see, I think maybe twice in my life have I ever seen like somebody openly carrying like a gun, There have probably been people concealing weapons, but that doesn't mean they're going to use them, Like, again, I'm walking around, it's 1 a.m. I have zero fear of anything bad happening, so. But yeah, like, I mean, that's not to say we don't have problems in America, like, there shouldn't be any fucking homeless people on the street anyway, given all of the sort of vacant houses that exist. And just, I mean, not even just houses, but like vacant fucking properties that are just going to waste while people are living on the streets with no food. Like that's a ridiculous thing. But, and rent is kind of high here. I mean, I think in the Northeast it's probably a little bit higher than it is. I mean, I think there's some places where you can find like places with cheap rent, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. I think you would really love it here if you came, Daniel. But again, hey, maybe your heart's in Japan. Maybe that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. Then so be it. But I think you would like it here. But yeah. So that's probably the night walk. Walking the streets here, creeping the streets, trying to figure out whether or not this is just some long dream I'm having. And possibly, if this is a dream, turning it into something amazing. Yeah, so that's it. Goodbye. It is a dream. You're dreaming right now. Okay, bye.